Thanks, Greg, for stealing my thunder with that song. Keith's, what do you call it, main attribute, his beautiful attribute was his voice, of course. For me, he was up there with Harry Seacombe and the greats. And I just loved when he sang. Leo Rivera wrote to me yesterday and said, Keith sang in our choir. He said Keith's voice filled the cathedral with its rich resonance. And it did. And I can remember, I think it was early 90s when Janet and I first moved here. We'd come to Mass in the evenings and Jacqueline and Alvin, Sue Hirsch and Keith used to sing. They'd arrive about a minute before Mass and rehearse. But as soon as Keith started to sing, you saw every head in the church turn to look to see where that beautiful sound came from. I had the same experience up at St. Asquith. I used to play there every now and then for a Mass. And they didn't sing the psalms, so I got friends to come and sing the psalm for us. Sonia did it, Marion did it, and Keith did it once. And we saw everybody in the church look up. Where did this come from? Where did this wonderful voice come from? And afterwards, people mocked him because it was so beautiful to listen to him sing. There was another side to that. If he sat next to Deb in choir rehearsal, he'd tell her a joke and completely ignore the fact that we were trying to rehearse a hymn. And Sonia will tell you a story about Keith at the HSC. When he was supervising an exam, decided to take a toilet break and got lost. And when he came back, he explained the entire examination. Where he'd been all this time. And Leo reminded me of one night we were singing and Keith was rostered to do the psalm, to sing Stand Here and Be Our Cantor. He sang the first refrain and Father Nathan came over and said, Keith, stand here. Yes, it was his voice, his signature attribute, but it was the passion for his music, the passion for other people, the passion for humour, for giving pleasure to other people. He spent all the time I knew him, always giving something to somebody else, and it was usually to do with the pleasure of music, the wonder of music. He was also frustrating to work with. I've never heard so many people roll their eyes and say, but I love him dearly. But he wanted to share his music, so these arrangements and concerts, incredibly amazing arrangements, choreographed to the minute, absolutely impossible. But at McEwen Park, I think he did it for 25 years, and you were all there. What amazed me when I got involved, which is, I guess, just before 2020 or something, was that all these people turned up. A lot of them came from the dark side. Long way south of the North Shoreline. They'd come up and they'd sing for Keith. And it was always a wonderful show. Not only would they do that, but they'd rehearse before they went in. And everybody just tried to make a wonderful show. And it took me a long time to understand what was happening. For me, there was a milestone, which was one night at the RSL, when we were running club music with a little jazz session we did for 4 years. About 2011, he turned up one night and said, I want to sing. So we put him on the stage, and for 20 minutes he lectured us about the relative strategies of the Germans and the Allies in 1939, and then he sang, I hang our washing on the Siegfried Law. And like that, I got him to sing that every time I could possibly do it. The other thing say I've got 60 seats in the front 4 rows of the Opera House, where anything goes was the first one I knew about. But in truth, he was ordering these seats to sell them before he had to pay for them, just so his friends would get a small discount. And I learned later on, as we went through these things every year, they caused him a lot of stress because people didn't pay, people didn't turn up. But he kept doing it, and he did it for other people. He was trying to give everybody the joy of that music at a slightly cheaper price. He'd have little dinners at the RSL. Invite 7 or 8 people along, and we'd all sit there and wonder why we were there, but we'd have a lovely night, just because Keith was there. But then, the major moment, the Let's All Sing concert down at the Light of Christ Centre. I can't remember the year, but it must have been 10 years ago. About 100 people performed that day, and about 400 turned up to watch it and listen. It was a marvellous day. It was memorable, and the quality of performance was amazing because people tried. They worked hard at it. They rehearsed. But there was a funny little episode. We were all down there 2 or 3 hours before it started to get things set up the chairs and everything. We had to change into the dictated costume, which for men was black shirts and black trousers. But we had on our casual clothes, and just before the show started, Keith disappeared to change. When he came back, he was wearing a shirt that was about 4 times bigger than him. We didn't really notice that, but the really funny thing was Jerry Enriquez trying to put on Keith's shirt. Jerry bigger than me. Then, after that, the one that I remember is musical soiree, which took place at lunchtime in Marion's house, where, again, 50 or 60 people turned up, and again, the performances, the talent that was on show that day was amazing. But for me, the really important part was when we got Keith to see hanging washing on the century line. By this stage, Keith was walking with his hands behind his back, taking very small steps. He was quite frail. But he walked up to the back of the piano, to the baby grand, and we started to play it. And he said, "No, that's in C, I want it in F." Now he told me. Anyway, so we played it in F, and he started singing. He never seen it in his life. He grew a foot. And he stood there so proud. And he sang so beautifully and so loudly. And I have a photograph of the finale where he's conducting and singing. And the joy on the faces of the people in that room, you can just see it flowing through the photograph because of Keith. Then came, he had said to me, "I'm never going to do that again." And I said, "Well, you're right, because I'm never going to do it again either. I'm not going to carry like gear around for you." And he said, "But no, sorry, I got that wrong. Greg," he said to me, "at the musical soiree, we're going to have a birthday party for Keith on his palindromic birthday date in 26. And I thought, "Oh, good. Few drinks, party pies." He'd licensed the Albert Hall to put on last night of the performance. This crazy, impossible plan. On the night, there were 29 performances. There were 6 or 7 competitions. There were 130 people in the room. 128 of them got on the stage at some time. Actually, I had some Elvis songs lined up for you, if you listened to you. But what a night it was. It was the most amazingly memorable event, certainly of the last couple of years. On that night, Brian Roach said, "Keith should have been Australian of the games, costumes, kids, loads of food, loads of singing and music, and there's Keith right in the middle of it. And I see a picture of one of them in the back of the book today. Annie Hughes of Keith's Golden Standard. Annie wrote to me and said, "He sang so beautifully. He was an inspiration. He was like an uncle to me. And I'm so sorry I won't be there." In fact, Keith had asked Annie if she could come and sing today. "I'm so sorry that I won't be there on Friday, but I will sing Laudate Domini at 11 a.m. I bet she did." Annie was the golden standard of music until Eugene came along and joined in, and he's now, in the last few months, Eugene was the greatest voice that we've ever heard. Thank you, Eugene, for being here. Father Anselm wrote to me and said, "I remember Keith as a lover of God. He loved his music and he spoke about his Catholic faith, and he was always ready to defend his faith." Which was a lot of fun if you reminded him that the HSC examination for religion at a Catholic college had nothing in it about Catholic doctrine. He was very cross about that, and he wrote to everybody and anybody, the priests, the parish office, the bishop. And I bet Archbishop of Invader Rome, beside release, was keen to now do somebody in the Vatican. Emily said to me, "Keith wrote the most beautiful emails and letters. They were crafted so beautifully, but Emily and Ferdy had said to Keith how they liked bushwalking. Keith was no longer able to bushwalk, so he turned up with an envelope full of all of his maps, all of his guides to every bushwalking track around Sydney. That was Keith. For me, every Christmas and birthday, he'd give me a bottle of Black Label Johnny Walker. Could have waited another 2 weeks. I'm out of whiskey. The mystery of Keith. Why did it happen? Did we all turn up? Did we all go and do those ridiculous concerts in such detail? We had a charity? No, we didn't do it from charity. We didn't even do it from friendship. We did it because we loved Keith. And I think there was a sense that he deserved it. We needed to give him something back. So we worked hard at it. And they will be mixed in with our memory of Keith forever. So I'll just close with the words of Robert Hall, Father Robert Hall. When he was told of Keith's death, texted us and said, "I'm praying for the angels and saints in heaven, for when Keith gets there to organise them."